Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the second season of the Code and Coffee Show. After quite a long break, I decided that we will start a season with a CMS, but not the usual CMS like WordPress or StateMake, a bit different one. And that's why I have Elio Struyf with me, who is the creator of the Front Matter CMS. Elio has led a remarkable career as an award-winning engineering lead, a trusted information technology thought leader, and an energizing public speaker with over a decade of experience facilitating events and conferences across Europe. And of course, he also creates an amazing add-ons to Visual Code Studio. Am I right?
That's correct. Thank you for the introduction.
But before we'll start diving into the Front Matter CMS, it's the Code and Coffee Show. So we are talking about the code. This is the second part, but first, it's time for a bit of coffee. So, are you a coffee drinker?
Of course, I am. So, as we are a developer, or as I'm a developer, yeah, I need to have my coffee in the morning.
So still, I think that during all the episodes of the Code and Coffee Show, I only had one person who said, "No, I prefer tea." So it was a bit weird way to start, right? Do you drink coffee?
It's a sad moment.
Yeah, it was like, okay, but let's continue. I remember that AI was an interesting topic back then, but yeah. And tell me, what is your favorite one? Do you have any?
Oh, my favorite coffee. Damn. Now you put me on the spot. I just like to drink coffee, and I like to have like a double espresso. That's probably my favorite one. I really want to have the taste of coffee. So it's always funny when you go to the US and you ask for a double espresso, then they're like, really? The short one? Yeah. And make it double, please. Okay. And no water added? Yeah, no water added. So weird. But that's what I like. And yeah, I try to not drink too much coffee during the day. So the coffee machine is just behind me. So if I want, I can drink it continuously. But I now limit myself to drink a maximum of 4 coffees a day. So that's fine enough.
Which I think it's still more than me, and I consider myself as a coffee maniac. I mean, but still, okay. it's again matter of quality rather than quantity.
True.
But I do agree that a good espresso is. The good espresso is good, but the horrible espresso, it leaves scars on your mind.
As long as you didn't make it. Then,
yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I must admit that when it comes to espresso, I really love adding it to some different either drinks or things like that. Like lately, I tried it was milk with orange juice and with espresso coffee. It's an interesting summer drink. Okay. I really recommend. It's really nice. I think it would be also good with double espresso. So.
Can be, yeah. Never really tried it. I never made myself a coffee cocktail. So the only thing I do during the summer, if it's really hot, I make myself a iced coffee, just milk, espresso. That's it. That's great. But that's the only thing that I do cocktail-wise for coffee.
So maybe
not considered that cocktail at all.
I mean, the summer is still here. You might try the orange espresso. I mean, you just fill the glass with orange juice and add an espresso.
Okay.
That's simple. Okay, so it's great to hear that you are also one of those coffee-flooded developers. It's really great. So yeah, let's talk about the Front Matter CMS. And so if you could describe it, what is it? Mm-hmm. How does it differ from the rest?
How does it differ from the rest? So Front Matter CMS is a CMS that runs within an existing application, which is called Visual Studio Code, where my whole day tends to be yet, because I'm a developer. So the moment I start my Mac, I open Visual Studio Code, and that's where I work. That's where I want to be. So a long time ago, when I moved away from WordPress over to Hugo, I started thinking about, hey, how can I make myself it easier to manage the metadata of my content or of my Markdown pages, which is the Front Matter section in your Markdown content. And as it was all Markdown driven, I was doing the full editing within Visual Studio Code. And that's where I started thinking, okay, Front Matter needs to be there. That's where I want to be, because I code, I do all the editing there. So why go somewhere else? And there was not anything that came to my mind. Oh, I will start using this CMS or using that. And there was nothing in Visual Studio Code that was doing something like that. So that's actually why I started building Front Matter. And yeah, until today, or today it became a CMS. But in the early days, it was far from a CMS system.
But this is because when we had a short chat before, you also said that you come from the WordPress environment in a way. So we can say lightly that WordPress a bit inspired you to push for Front Matter CMS. Why?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So I had my ups and downs with WordPress, like we probably all had. And one of these things that I really didn't like was when I hosted my own instance of WordPress was the MySQL databases, or the corruptions in the database records. Every once in a while, like every week, I think I had one. And then over time, I created myself a script there to just make sure that it didn't happen, or that I was recovering from it. So at the end, it was just running, checking every hour. Is there something wrong? No. Okay, just leave it. If there's something wrong, try to fix it. And then my website just was working fine. Another thing that I didn't like was the slowness of things. So I created myself, I talked about it to you already, but I created myself like a static site generator, which was like a 404 static site generator. So you went to an empty shell, you asked for a page, and behind the scenes, what was going to happen is, instead of showing a 404, it was first going to check on the server, hey, do you have a page with this slug in it? If so, yes, then it was just going to give me the HTML, and this HTML was going to be given to the first person that was asking for it. Nice. So the second person that comes to the site, same page, it's already cached, and I cached it for a couple of hours because it was just some HTML pages. Worked fine. And then at a certain point, I thought, okay, now I got this. Let's not call it a product, but it could potentially be a product. I thought maybe there's something better in the market. And then I started seeing all these things like static site generators and got myself interested in that. And one of them was Hugo, and started to experiment with Hugo. I found it, particularly easy to use. So converted my whole team over to Hugo, and then came the content migration. That was interesting because moving away from WordPress over to Markdown, like I think there were some plugins, but not everything was in it. I still needed to do a lot of find and replace. I created myself a couple of scripts. I even have a blog post that I've written with the things that I had to do. And with the script, I think that I had created in order to make everything work, because call outs, quotes and stuff that were not always working out of the box. Also, I had a lot of code blocks that needed to be converted over to code blocks that were understandable by Hugo, and so on and so on. So it took me, I think, a month or so in order to fully go from WordPress over to Hugo. And then from the moment I was moved over, I was really happy. And I said, okay, I'm never going to do this again. I will just stick with Markdown, and I will try to make it as easy as possible to just go to any other static site generator if at a certain point Hugo stops or there's another one, like for instance Astro these days. I can just pick up my content, go to Astro, do the configuration there, and get up and running quite easily.
Yeah, that's true. I must admit that your argument about having this content in the database, I mean, we know that it has its pros and cons, but when it comes to migrating, when it comes to working on a project with a bigger team, it starts to be a bit annoying. And having all the content as a part of your repository in some way, it's so easy to work with. It's this was also one of the things that all those static site generators kind of inspired me of to start using them, because you have everything in your repository. There is no the whole setup is much easier. Like, everything is easier. So why waste your time on many hideous things that you would have to normally do, or also maintaining it? Because
plus
as you
also
said,
version control. If you just go Markdown, if you use Git, there's a whole version control system around it. So it's so much easier to just see whatever happened to your page, even if you're sharing it with others and so on. So
yeah, even if a CMS will have a revision system or something, why reinvent the wheel? I mean, Git is perfect for this. It's yeah. So you also mentioned that Front Matter CMS is totally CMS agnostic, right? Because we can use it with everything that will use Markdown, or probably Markdown X too, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So I was thinking, maybe let's show how it works. What do you think?
Yeah, perfect. So let me share my screen. And there we go. So over here, just Visual Studio Code with a Astro blog template. So what I already did beforehand was create a new project with the blog template, and what I can show is how it works, so that you can see if I'm not doing a typo. There we go. And this is the default out-of-the-box blog template you get from Astro. So you have a home page, you have a blog, there are a couple of items or pages in it, and so on. So I haven't changed anything yet to it. So typically when you pick a CMS, you need to start configuring that. For Front Matter, it's all done within Visual Studio Code. So if you haven't installed the Front Matter extension yet, because it's an extension, you just search for it for Front Matter. And normally you get two of them. So you have the stable version and you have the beta version. I always run on the beta version. You can only have one installed at the same time, because otherwise they're getting conflicted. So make sure that one of them is installed, and if two of them are installed, disable one. So I installed this one. From the moment it's installed, you can see that you have on the activity bar a Front Matter icon, and that's what you get. So Front Matter icon, there are some actions. So some things can be done without even initializing a project. So you can enable the writing mode and so on. But let's first go to the initialization of the project. So initialization of the project means that we are going to add some new files to the project. So the first thing that we'll add is a frontmatter.json file. Frontmatter.json file is like an equivalent of the settings.json, because behind the screen, FrontMatter is just using the Visual Studio Code settings. But in order to make it easier to share a FrontMatter or your settings with others, we made it like a theme file so that it becomes a frontmatter.json file that can be just used with others. So if I click on initialize, you see that it gets initialized. The framework is already set to Astro. The reason is because there's a check with the files that are inside your repository. So in this case, it checks for the astro.config.mgs file. So in case it finds this file, it knows, oh, this is an Astro project. We support a couple of others. So if it's not there, you can just use other, and then you need to do the configuration yourself. Or if it's a known one, it will either be selected or you select it, and then the configuration will be done. You see a really new thing. It's like a shiny new, shipped it in beta 1 hour before this webcast. So I will show this afterwards. So we just ignore it for a second because it's not a Starlight project. So I'm going to show you that afterwards. And then with Astro, you have a new feature, which is the Astro asset folder. The block template isn't making use of it yet. So in this case, all the images should be in the public folder. So you can also see that in the block template, you see the public folder and then all your images. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Front Matter, hey, all my images, they will be in the public folder. Why is this needed? Because this way we can do media management as well inside Front Matter. Another thing is for Front Matter to know where it can create content. So as you mentioned, Front Matter is a framework or static site generator as agnostic. So it's up to you where you want to create content. So we just need to know where you want to create the content. So in this case, it found a block folder where there should be Markdown files or MDX files. And this is the case, so it's going to highlight this. And then you can say, okay, I want to use this, and I'm going to name it block. That's it. So now Front Matter knows, okay, it's in the block template, in the block folder. If you're using text and categories in your pages and you want to already import them, you can do so, but the block template doesn't do anything. So clicking on this, it will just find 0 text and 0 categories. So in case if you're already using tags and categories, you click on it, it will all import them to Front Matter, and that way you don't have to think about it ever anymore. And once it's done, you can just click on the show dashboard, and that's it. So this is the dashboard of Front Matter, where you see the contents, you see the media files. So if you have other files, so there's other folders in it, so you can also go there, you can create new folders. We also have a snippet section. You can compare it to snippets from Visual Studio Code, but they are a little bit more advanced, and I'm going to show that in a matter of minutes. Data files can be used. Data files is for giving extra information, like for instance, if you have some authors of your site and you want to keep these authors or links or so on, you can keep them in a data file, which is sometimes a JSON file. And then you can add these records. You can add these records into your Markdown files and so on. Taxonomy management. If you want to use tags and categories, you can also have your custom tags and categories or custom taxonomy fields. And over here, you can see which tags, which categories are used and where they are used. So you can do some, if, for instance, we create a tag, says Markdown, and we use it somewhere in our content, then we see, okay, over here is Markdown. You click on it and you land on the content dashboard where you can filter on these articles. So besides that, it comes to sorry, it comes down to editing content, of course. So let's just open an item. This is a normal blog item. That's it. So you can start contributing to that. But if you now open the panel again, you will see that a couple of things have changed. So you have an SEO status, like it checks for the title, it checks for the slug, all of these things. You can even do keywords. So if you want to have a check on a particular keyword inside your code, so MDX, for instance, let's check. So it's going to say, hey, MDX is being used inside the title, but not inside the description. Make sure that's also inside the description and so on. So you can do these things. Besides that, you have a couple of actions and you have some metadata. But let's first do the metadata because that's the most important. Because the metadata is actually telling you what the file is all about. So if you're already using a CMS or have used a CMS with Front Matter or with Markdown, you know that you need to manage the front matter of your file. And that's this section that I just highlighted. This section contains all the fields and telling your CMS or your page or your framework what is this all about. So when is this published? What's the description? What's the title? And so on. What's the hero image? So in case when you're using Front Matter, it's going to read this section. And by default, it will map it to the default content type that we have configured. And the default content type contains a title, description, publishing date, content preview, and a couple of other things. And that's why it's now telling me, oh, there is a mismatch. And because of this mismatch, it's always going to show these buttons. So what to do there is to first go and do a configuration in our frontmatter.json file to actually tell my Front Matter instance, hey, this is the content type that I want to use. So give me just a quick one. And I'm going to just remove a couple of things. This, and what I just did is I made a couple of changes. And the first change that I made is that all my content that I want to create is having a preview path if I want to do previews within Visual Studio Code, which are reliant to blog. So everything is underneath blog. The file type for the content that I want to create is MDX. So you don't have to specify this. By default, it will use Markdown or MD. But if you want to change it, you can just say MDX or any other type of your preference. File prefix, by default, Front Matter will prefix it with the current date. That's how I like to create my articles, because then I can just sort them by date. In this case, as the blog template is not doing that, I can just tell the prefix to be null, so then it's not being used. A couple of other things that I needed to change were the fields. So fields were title, a description field, a publishing field, and a content preview. Now, in the publishing fields, there we specified, okay, if you create new content, it needs to be with a placeholder now. So the current date will be created, and it will need to be in this date format. Why? Because this is the date format the blog template is also using. So we stay consistent with it. And I can also say, hey, it's a published date. The reason why I need to do this, or the reason why I use this, is because then it will show up over here. So then the content preview, meaning the hero image that will show whenever you are going to create the page and going to use it as an open graph image and going to add it at the top of your page. Here I can also specify that it's a preview image, and what this means is that on the dashboard, all these images will be used. So in this case, I will just store it. I will quickly clear the cache and reload. There we go. So just to be sure that normally it's just going out of the box and clearing the cache automatically for you whenever you see changes, but I fixed it manually just to be sure that it's quicker and that we already have it. So over here now, back on the dashboard, you see that all these preview images have been loaded. So if I'm going back to the using MDX and I'm going to Front Matter, you see that all the warnings are gone. And now you have the title, you have the description, publishing date, and the content preview. So for instance, I can remove the image and I can click on this, and then I can say, I want to add this image, save it, go back over here and go back to content. And you see that using MDX just got a new preview image. So it's all automatically done for you. So let's, sorry. Let me pick this one again. And that's the first configuration that we did. So in this case, now that the content type has been created, what you can also do is actually view the content in Visual Studio Code. So underneath actions, you see an open preview. So in order to open the preview, we just start the server. If my server wants to spin up, let's now it's starting up. And if I'm going to open the preview, you see that the preview is now there. If I want, I should be able to make changes. Let's change. You see immediately the changes inside.
Amazing.
So I don't have to update my browser. If I want, I can just click over here. If I didn't right click, if I click over here, then I can open it in my browser as well, so that I don't have to copy the URL over there. So let's stop the server. Let's go back to our Front Matter panel. And what we can also do is create new content, of course. So if I just say, hey, create new content, coffee and codes, we immediately get this. So the title is already filled in for us. Description, just an article about coffee and codes. It said that it needed to be the date of today, so it did it.
So it's now, yes.
September, yeah, and then we can pick an image. Let's pick this one, and I stopped the server. Shouldn't have done that.
True.
So now we see that everything works indeed. So Front Matter can go a little bit further than that. You can do a lot of other things. One of these things that I mentioned is snippets. So one of these things that the blog template has is a header component link. And for this, you see a text. If you click on it, this will not work inside Visual Studio Code because alerts are being blocked. But if we just go over to the website, you see that it's clicked. Not something really fantastic, but if, for instance, this is a component that you're going to use very often in your code, then you probably don't want to, or you want to make it easier to include it. And that's where snippets come in place. So I will copy this. And over here, you have snippets. So if I click on the insert snippet, I will land on the snippet dashboards. And as I don't have a snippet yet, I can create one. So what I can say is header link components.
Mhm.
This is just a there we go. I can add this. And you can also use placeholders. So placeholders, for instance, can be set to selection or content. And you can also specify, that's probably better, with an ampersand, because we are using mustache behind the screen for templating. And if it's an ampersand in the before it, so prefix it with ampersand, will mean that it's not going to encode the content.
Okay.
Over here, you see media snippets. There's two types of snippets. You have content snippets and you have media snippets. Media snippets work almost the same way, but it's done for your media files. If you, there's more information about it. But with media snippets, you have like, what is the path to your image? How big is the image? What type is the image? And so on. So all these things are being added as custom placeholders. So if you, for instance, want to do some adaptations on the file path and so on, you can just do that with these media snippets. So then you just need to know which placeholders there are. You can find them inside the documentation. So what we have done now is creating a snippet. So let's just go back to your front matter.json file to actually see what happened behind the scene. And over here,
Okay, it's here.
This is a snippet that has been created. If you already did create Visual Studio Code snippets, it will look familiar because you have a body and then a couple of other things. But the cool thing about it is, with, for instance, this, it saw that this is a variable, so it's a field for Visual Studio for Front Matter. So we can just say, hey, if we want to add something, it's going to ask me what is the content. So let's go back, and if I click on snippets and I will click on add, I can now write this is the content, insert it, and it will be inserted. Now, nice, okay, but can we make it better? Yes, we can. And I will, just for the sake of this demo, I will just disable the wrapper. The wrapper was the comments around it to be able to quick and easily edit other snippets that were already imported. But what we can do here is, what if when I write some text, I want to copy this and I would like to click on this, and it would already be filled in for me because I selected this content. And this is also something Front Matter can do. So in this case, what we need to do is we need to tell the snippets to have a particular placeholder to look for. And the default value that we need to fill in is fm_selected_text. Also documented, so no worries. If you ever want to see this again, go to the documentation, you will find it. But the nice thing now is that we can just select it, click on it, and for some reason
it didn't work.
Yeah, let me just
maybe a refresh is needed.
Normally it isn't, but during demos, you will never know.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me just do this, and I know what happened. It was still open because I didn't insert it the first one, so it was still on the empty content, and that's why. So now, if I would have closed it and I would have opened it again, you see that this is now there. So I can insert it. So you can do more things there. So if, for instance, this alert needs to be updated, you can say alerts, and then you just copy this. There we go. And now when I'm going back, and I would say I want to do this, I want to add. See, you now see the alert.
And
this
exactly
is the alert. There we go. And now it's inserted. You also see that the alert is inserted and so on. So that's one of the other things that Front Matter can do. There's more, but one thing that I always like to do is make it so that it works exactly how I want it to work for me, which is very weird because I'm the creator. But there are some things that I do for my own blog that I will not do for any other projects. Like I got a couple of other projects that I'm using Front Matter CMS with, but mainly I use it for my blog. And what I use for my blog is I'm generating open graph images automatically on the fly whenever I create a new page. So what I prepared for this thing is the hero image that we are creating over here. We can also automatically do that or let it create it for us. So that every time you create something new or you do something, you can let Front Matter do it for you. So let's go back over to the front. We don't need to be here, but let's do this. So we see our code. And what we can do here inside scripts, I already created a folder. Inside scripts, I'm going to create a social image.cgs. And let me copy this content. And this is the actual content of the codes or the snippets or the script. And I need to install a couple of npm packages. So in this case, I'm going to install node HTML to image and then UUID because I want to have a unique file name and then a date formatting. That's it. So the moment I have this, I can start using it. So what it actually does is I created some HTML, and with the HTML, I'm going to generate myself an image. But Front Matter will execute this, and Front Matter will execute this script, and it will give me arguments. And then from the arguments, I get a workspace argument. So where does the file need to be created? What is the actual file from where it comes from? So for instance, if you want to do some manipulation in the file, you already know the file path, so you can do that. So a script can be used to either enhance it or to do something else with it, like trigger a database or trigger a website and so on. You also have the data argument. The data argument is the Front Matter. So there you will get the title, the description, and so on. So all of that, once you have that, you just pass it in and you check if the title and the publication date have been set. And if it has been set, you are going to create a Node.html image. So that's my custom script. So in anyone else's case, it can be something different. Now, how to use it is to let Front Matter know that there's a new script. And you can do that with, for instance, not too fast. You can do that with Front Matter custom scripts. And there I'm going to say, hey, generate me a social image, which is going to use this file and then it's going to use this node command. Because I'm using MVM, it just wants to know where my MVM instance is. Let me check because I recently updated to version 18, so probably it's going to complain about this, and if not, then we switch it back. So what we can do here, if we go back to a content file and you open Front Matter, let's see, have we saved it? For some reason,
yeah, let's reload. We know that it will be.
Yeah, no, normally the reload is automatically, but it can be that in my beta version, I did something incorrectly, so I will check that. But over here, you have the generate social image. And if I'm clicking on this button, it's actually going to execute it. And
Whoa, it
what you now
works.
see is it updated this field. And the reason why it updated this field is because of the script. Inside the script at the end, I'm going to check if it's a placeholder. We'll tell you more about that. Or if it's something else. And then I can just say, hey, if it's something else, I want to update the front matter and I want to update the hero image with the actual file name. So if we are going to check in public, there should be a social folder, and inside social, there should now be a new image. And this is also something we can see over here in using MDX. We can do the same thing for front matter, coffee and code, and generate me an image. And there we go. You see, so coffee and code has been updated. So that's what you get whenever you are generating a social image. Now,
I must say that this feature is really amazing. It's really amazing, and based on the amounts of discussions that we have, how to automate the creation of hero images, this also seems very simple.
It depends on how good your coding skills are, of course. But this still requires a push on the button. So you can even go a step further, and you can also say, okay, let front matter create it the moment you created content. And you can do this either by going to your content type, and then you have a post script that you can run. So meaning from the moment a script or from the moment content has been created, you need to run the script. Or you can also specify a placeholder. And for instance, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to tell to use a OG image placeholder. So OG image placeholder is not a placeholder that front matter knows. So it doesn't know anything. So if you would use it, it will just say, hey, the default value is OG image, because I don't know what OG image is. So you can also tell front matter that OG image is a custom placeholder that you want to add. Same thing. Over here, what we are going to do is we are going to create some content placeholders, give it an ID of OG image.
Exactly.
Tell to use the same script, tell to use the same version of Node. And if you don't want this to show up, you can just say hidden to true, and then it will be invisible. But what you can do now is when I'm going over to the content section and I'm going to create coffee and code, but better. The creation process is slightly longer, and the reason why is because we needed to create this new image. So we have content and code, but better. So automatically from the creation of new content, we have this available. So there are known front matter CMS placeholder, but you can also add your own logic there. So for instance, if you want to have unique IDs and it comes from a different system, or you have your own kind of logic, you can do so. You just include the script, you pass in the placeholder, and that's it. So that's what you can do over there. So all of that is documented on the website. So for that to be used. So, and that's also what we can immediately see here in the content and code, but better action. So that's the basic configuration. Already goes a little bit further in snippets and how you can use it. You can also add images. So at the top bar on the right, you see a couple of useful things, like if you want to have an heading, you can just specify, okay, I want to have an heading 3, and then you can start this heading 3. It also work like this. So if we have a heading 4, we have a heading 4. There we go. So it will just add this. I can do bold, linking, and so on. But you can also add images. So if you click on the image, you see your image dashboard. Same thing. You click on the plus sign, and it will automatically add images. Now, this image doesn't have a description. So what you can do there is, for instance, over here, I want to edit this. You can give it the title, blog placeholder, caption, these things. So title, caption, alternate text, these are up to you. So in my case, I only needed to use title. But if, for instance, you have like a figure that you want to show, and the caption underneath your image is needed, then you can use caption. And that's what I meant with the image placeholders. You can use image placeholder just to insert these things on the right place. So you can just say, hey, I want to use a caption, I want to use the alternate text, or I want to use the title. So in this case, I just added the caption you see over here. And if I'm now clicking on add, you can see blog placeholder gets added as well. So there's some metadata. Nothing is going to a database, meaning that it always sticks with your project. So in your project, you will find the .front matter folder, which some so-called database files, where you have your media database and you have your taxonomy database. So there were no tags, there were no categories. But here you can see there's a blog placeholder. This is the caption, the alt, the title, and so on. So all there, all within that particular project. So there's no servers involved in it. So all sticks within your own project. So it's pretty secure to your own.
About the images and managing images in markdowns, I always think that this is one of the biggest barriers for many people to switch to markdowns. Because managing images is, by default, it's quite horrible, to say at least. And thanks to solutions like this, it just becomes like in any other CMS. You just have a library of images. You can have this alternate text or whatever written just once and not remembered every time when you reuse an image.
Yeah.
So amazing.
And if I'm just going to quickly show my own blog. So if I'm doing this, so I configured Git. So if you want, you can enable Git, and then you have a syncing. So all I need to do is just click on the sync button, and then all gets synced to me. But I can just go to this. And for instance, if I'm now going to click on an image, I will see two actions. I will see a plus sign, which is a default markdown action, and I can click on this coating. If I click on this coating, it will say, hey, there's an image snippet and a video snippet. That's because I created myself two media snippets. And I just say image snippet, and now it's going to insert the image with my media snippet. So in case you are doing something else and you want to, in my case, caption new is shortcodes, caption new is doing this. So it's going to create live books, it's going to check for description and so on. So that's where it's going to use the description, so the caption and so on. So this is what's going to be rendered, but that's something I don't know, or Front Matter doesn't know. So I configured this within my CMS. So I configured this in my frontmatter.json file. There will be and then I will have over. Why am I snippets? I need to use snippets.
Snippets, yeah, the caption.
Over here. This is
Mhm.
where you can see. So the media URL is a placeholder. Caption is a placeholder. So these are all coming from our media library. And that's where I just specify, hey, this is a media snippet. So if it's not a media snippet, it will be something else. So then it will be content snippet. And I have got a couple of content snippet as well. Like for instance, if I want to insert a blog quote, I can just say, okay, it's an info or an important one. Or if I want to add code to my editor, then I can just say what kind of code, TypeScript, and so on, and insert it, and it will insert it like that. So that's how
there was
I
one thing on your dashboard that kind of got interested. I saw the views.
Oh, yeah. So one of these things is these things you meant.
Yeah.
So views is something I have created, and just give me a second. That was my son. That was just coming home. So it's all about extensibility. So one of these things that is now in experimental mode is the UI extensibility, where you can just have extensibility points to our dashboard, and you can, for instance, change the footer, the image, and so on to your own needs. So it's what it's doing is you just add some JavaScript to it, and then you do whatever. So I created myself a web component, and with the web component, I'm going to override this. So, and that's what you can do over here. So you can change the header images and so on. So what I did here is, let me UI, I got external, and then over here, I got footer, most probably here. So footer is a card footer. So I pass in the data slug, and what's it going to do is it's going to render me my element or a visitor badge indeed. And there's a read-only mode. Now it's coming from visitor badge.io. And this is also added to each and every single page. So that way I immediately know where it comes from. Also a site that I created a long time ago. But this is where the data is coming from. So that's how I added it to the dashboard. That's how you see it. I also use what I want to say. Oh, I also use comments within my blog, and these comments are coming from GitHub discussions. So if you would go to my blog, this one, there we go. If you would go to my blog, at the bottom, you see these are all coming from GitHub discussions. So that's what you can see here in my GitHub discussion. So everyone, if you want to comment, it's all going to my Elio Struyf comments section or repository. And I did the same thing over here. So I wrote myself a script to check how many comments there are. So on my dashboard, I immediately know, okay, there are so many comments. If I click on it, it will land over here and I can start commenting or replying to actions there. So that's one of these things that I did. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So otherwise, I'm going to show off a new feature that was now ready for 2 hours. Or
before you start showing this, I just want to say that for the first time when I saw Front Matter, I just thought, yeah, it's just a very simple CMS thanks to which you can manage the Front Matter data and manage images. I mean, that's already great because those are one of the most tedious thing about managing Markdown files. But the way how you can extend it it's really amazing. It's really amazing, and I think that, and I wouldn't be surprised that many developers kind of missed it. And this is a huge selling point of Front Matter CMS, that it can became like your center of managing your blog, like really with everything, especially those social images, connecting the thing that you showed with the views. It's amazing, and you can connect it with whatever you want and as you want. So
it's always nice to see my own use cases in it. So like for instance, these actions, I needed to have these use cases, so that's why I brought them there. But now others are also using it. Over here, you also see my text that I'm using inside my articles. And if I'm going to taxonomy, that's where you can see all the taxonomy. I can just say, oh, I want to see the articles of Azure. And now it's automatically going to filter where the tag Azure is being used. You can see a couple of older posts where I don't have open graph images and so on. So you can do a whole filtering there as well. You can also do it like this, like actions and so on. So AI. But yeah, having it from this taxonomy dashboards, same thing for data management. If you have a couple of links that you want to show, I can just add new entries or change them from here. So that's what you can do with the dashboards.
Amazing, really amazing. Okay, so let's see your 2 hours.
One last thing. One last thing. So Astro is so popular these days, and one of the new things of Astro is Starlight. So Starlight is a template they created
for documentation.
For documentation, indeed. So I got interested in it because one, I like documentation, and two, because
of course,
Astro.
Everyone likes documentation.
Not good writing, documentation, indeed. Not writing it in.
But reading a good documentation, it's a pleasure.
So Astro is now providing Starlight as a good template to create new documentation. So it comes out of the box with guides and references. So there's 2 pages. That's it. Nothing more. So what I thought about was like, hey, what do I need to do in order to make sure that that Front Matter can be used, and what's the configuration needed? So I started to configure a couple of things, the content types, the page folders, and so on. And then all of a sudden, I was thinking, can I make it easier so that people don't have to do all these things, just copy pasting it, but just by clicking on a button? Like, for instance, if you ever used a Astro, you can just integrate Tailwind, or you can integrate React by just saying, hey, Astro, I want to have this, and then a script runs and it will automatically add it. So I thought, okay, maybe I need to do the same thing. So I came up with a templating solution. So if I'm now going to Front Matter, you see initialize project, because the project was not initialized yet. So what I will do is initialize it. It will see, oh, it's Astro. And then a new thing becomes available, and it's a configuration template, which is Starlight. So in the future, it can be for any other kind of templates. So it's not only for Astro. Right now, it's the only one that is available. But what I can do now is I can just say, yeah, I want to use Starlight. I click on it. And the moment I click on it, everything is already configured for you. So if I'm going to my Explorer view, I have my frontmatter.json file, and over here there's a couple of things that have been done. So it has set, okay, its framework is Astro. There's some preview that has been set. You're going to use the new public folder, which is being set to source assets. Why? Because everything is now in the assets folder. And I extended it. That's what I typically do to make sure that everything is a little bit more compact. So I split down my content type files in a different file, page folders, and so on. So in Front Matter, you have a Starlight folder, and there's already a snippet available. There's a content type available. Over here, you see a squiggly line. Reason is because it's also brand new from today. And you see page folders. So you see guides and references. So if everything worked fine, what I can do now is I can create content, and you see guides and references. And I can click guides, and let's say coffee and codes guide.
Of course.
And now we have coffee and codes. We go over to Front Matter. We can just hide this. And of course, I need to reload because I have that issue with my setting file, which I'm going to look into. So what you see in the metadata section over here is you see a title, you see a description, and you have some optional configuration. And these optional configurations are coming from Starlight, because Starlight allows you to modify the URL where you can edit the file, or if you want to show a banner at the top. So let's just do this actions, spin up the server. Let's see if the preview is working. Perfect.
It is.
So it is the content.
It works.
Content description. Just there we go. Won't show up because it's a description in the metadata. But for instance, the banner content, if we want to show a banner, this is the banner. And there we go.
And we have a banner, yeah.
Yeah. And you will also see it over here. So content has been added. This is the way how Starlight wants you to add the banner. Same thing for table of contents. By default, the table of content is set to a minimum level of heading 2 and a maximum level of heading 3. If you want to have more levels, you can just add it. So you can just say, hey, I want to have 7 levels of headings maximum, and so on. Over here, it's going to say, hey, must be less than 6. So also interesting. What we can do then is just go to our Front Matter file over here, and we can say minimum and maximum. So we can say max is 6. So
exactly.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then we cannot go over 6. So page templates, there's 2 page templates. We have a splash template. Not sure if this is going to be visible over here. Yeah, there we go. So
one has a sidebar and the second doesn't, right? Yeah.
Correct, indeed. So, but we can now just say, okay, doc is the default one, so we don't have to specify this. But if you want to use Splash, you can use it. So all there. So it makes it easier for people that just want to quickly start using Starlight in combination with Front Matter, because it's now already integrated. Probably a couple of more things are needed. So this is the first version. But the cool part is that there are templates available. Also, there's a content snippet available. So what I can do is I can click on this. I can click on a site. I can specify caution. Very important. This is really important.
Important, yeah.
And then insert it, save it, and there we go. Oh. And this is a wrapper. The reason why this wrapper is here, because I need to know the actual data. So you can turn it off if you don't want this. But if I would say I want to edit this snippet, I just click somewhere in the snippet. I click on it, and it will immediately open my snippet. And now I can just say, oh, it was danger. And I can update it, save it, and there we go. So that way, there's some intelligence around snippets as well. Some people like it, that there's their wrapper. Some people don't. So it's up to you. You can just, it's a setting, like with almost everything in Front Matter. You can just enable or disable whatever you want to do there.
Wow.
So I think that was like all that I could show. So and
And
some brand new features as well.
I I must say that, like I mentioned, I'm really amazed. I'm really amazed because yeah, it's a full blown CMS. I mean, and as we kind of joked during our dry run, I still don't understand why doesn't venture capital companies don't just throw millions of dollars at you, because you are serverless. You don't require server at all. You are headless. Amazing. And it's a no SQL solution. I mean, literally, there is no SQL. So every venture capital company that has a bit of money left, you should invest in Elio.
Always
He
welcome.
has all the buzzwords. He has all the buzzwords, and yeah, it's just a great solution. So I would really recommend it for everyone who did not ever tried it. And for example, especially if you like working with markdowns, yeah, give it a try. It will just make your life so much simpler. And I can tell you that that before this episode, it kind of inspired me that yeah, I will probably add the front matter configuration to my Pacamara theme that I created for Astro, because why not?
Cool.
And also, I'm kind of surprised that there aren't more of themes for different CMSs that could just add this simple config.
Hmm.
Because it just made everyone's life easier, right? Because you just open a project and there is nothing to configure because it's already there. It's done. So,
Yeah, that's what I believe that we can start doing. So yeah, the moment this gets adopted and this gets tested, then we can add a couple of more configurations there. So yeah, I
and
think
kind of
I think the templating
mhm.
will be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and from kind of top of my head, the thing that could really work amazingly, especially, I mean, it's an Astro now, since they added the way to describe the content. What are the front matter arguments that are used? I mean, having a way to synchronize it with front matter CMS with a click of a
Mhm.
button would be amazing, right? Because for example, this case of maximum headings. I mean, it's already saved in the content JSON file, if I remember, something like
Yeah, in the
this.
config file, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's at least, yeah. There is. Was it an open issue or was it a question into Discord?
Mhm.
There are people that already asked me like, "Hey, we have this collection configuration of Astro. Can Front Matter already read this?" So that would be amazing if we come up with something like that. Um, Seeing an Astro project, and whenever you initialize it, it will just use these collections
Yeah.
in case for content type generation. Probably you have to do a couple of things there as well to make sure that it's correct. But at least the basics are there. So
Hmm.
that's what I'm going to look into in the future. So as it's now the second time or the fifth time that people asked it, so as you always asked it, so it's a cool idea. So and it's
Yeah, because
actually the
it's
first.
mhm.
Yeah, it's also one of the first CMS. No, one of the first frameworks or static site generators that does it via that approach. Like there's nothing in Hugo that defines it
Mhm.
somewhere. So, or it needs to be an archetype. So, yeah, Mm, Astro did it the right way. So now we have to
That is
follow
true.
and come up with a solution for that.
Yeah, and that would be also great if others would follow. So we would have one standard for it.
Yeah.
So this way, you would also benefit because one solution would work for more rather than just one. Okay, Elio. So thank you so much for showing and explaining what Front Matter can. Like I said, you inspired me more than a bit because probably even tomorrow I will start working integrating some things into
Cool.
into my Astro theme. And yeah, I hope that all of you that watch us also learned something, and give Front Matter a try, and don't forget to follow Elio on his Twitter. Where are you? Also, you're on LinkedIn, somewhere else, and
Yeah,
GitHub, of
probably
course.
everywhere. But yeah,
Probably
Twitter is
everywhere.
the most convenient platform, or X when we
X, yeah,
use it.
I
Yeah.
it it really doesn't
Yeah,
sound
no,
good.
no. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I every time when I try to say it, my brain is like, no. Let's say Twitter. Maybe Alan will just get bored and he sells it, and maybe then next person will go back to
But if you use
one.
my first name, last name.com, so eliostruyf.com, then you land on my website, and there are all the links to LinkedIn, to X, and so on. So there you will
And do you
find
have a
everything.
Blue Sky account too?
I got a Blue Sky account too, yeah. And I got a Threads account too, and what was it? Mastodon.
And
I
the Mastodon
yeah,
was first from Listens, yeah.
yeah, indeed. So I got all these accounts, but I never really used them. So I got Blue Sky, posted a couple of things. I got Threads, which was pretty interesting because I got Threads from Europe, and then I went to Canada a while ago, and there I couldn't reply anymore. So I could see people threads
Mhm.
or posting threads, but I could not reply on it. I could not like it, and I could not post myself. So back when I was in Europe, I could do these things again. So it was pretty weird. So I never
You
really.
can use it because I can't.
Oh, I can use it. So
L-
yeah, it's still
Lucky,
on my
lucky
phone.
you,
So,
lucky you. I mean,
but I cannot
I
use it
also
anywhere else. Only in Europe or in Belgium. So
okay. So yeah. Again, thank you so much. It was really amazing to learn from you, and we are seeing in 2 weeks, and next time we will talk about security. So mark your calendars already, and see you soon. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
have a great day. Bye bye.